What up, everybody, and welcome to Baz on Blades. My name is Baz, and I talk about blades. Today's feature blade, we've got a cold steel product in the house. What we've got is the Cold Steel SR1. This particular SR1 is in the Tanto blade configuration. It is also available in a Cold Steel-esque clip point configuration. So, what do we have here in the Cold Steel SR1 Tanto model number 62LA? We've got a big, chunky, heavy-duty cold steel build, and in my opinion, what this build is, it is an in-between step between something like the Recon 1 and the 4MAX model. And I'm sorry, I do not have a 4MAX model on hand here, although I have reviewed the 4MAX. You can go into my playlist in reviews and find that review. If I remember, I will try to put a link in the description for this video. But what this is sort of an in-between step for that. Now, this is an Andrew Demko design. Andrew Demko is a custom knife designer and maker. He also works for Cold Steel as he's basically, from what I understand, he's the head of their research and development department. And Andrew Demko is very, very well known as the creator of the Triad lock design and multiple other extremely strong folding knife lock systems. Andrew specializes in larger, very, very heavy duty folding knives, and it's very easy to see his influence within modern cold steel knives and their lineup. Cold Steel has always made big knives, but when Andrew came into the fold with Cold Steel, in my opinion, there was a major change as far as not the quality of the knives, but there was a change from we're just super big to we're super big and super strong also. And of course, you know, Cold Steel extensively uses the Triad lock, and it is pretty much considered to be the strongest lock on the production folding knife market, and with good reason too. So let's set this down. We'll take a very quick look at the packaging here. You've got a standard sort of Cold Steel box with the picture of the knife on it, some specifications on it. Wrong end of the box, but you do see this is what you've got here in the box. The knife comes in the box in a bubble wrap bag, and unlike many modern Cold Steels, this one does not come with a second pocket clip, because you see the pocket clip is a straight pocket clip and not radiused, where you'll need a second opposite radius for left-hand carry. You can use this same pocket clip on either side, and we'll go ahead and knock out that this is ambidextrous for right or left hand tip up carry. It is a straight stamped steel pocket clip with a wide profile, a nice flat tip, plenty of room under the pocket clip. As you can see here, I actually this is a pretty stout pocket clip, guys, but I like this design. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing. It's not deep carry. You can see it's this 3-screw pattern around a lanyard hole base plate top. It does give you, you can see my thumb here, and I've got medium-sized hands, so it does give you enough to grab a hold of. And in defense of that not being deep carry, this is not a knife that I would even care about that, guys. And I generally like deep carry pocket clips. So let's go ahead, we'll knock out the specs on this, get all of these numbers out of the way. And what we've got is a factory blade length of 4 inches. I measured it just shy of that, probably 3 15/16 of an inch, or 10 centimeters. Blade stock thickness is 189 thousandths of an inch, or 4.8 millimeters. And unlike a lot of companies, this says 4.8 millimeters. It's 4.8 millimeters on my calipers. It's not shy of that for finishing the steel. It is actually 4.8 millimeters finished thickness. The blade width at the widest point, 1.13 inches or 28.7 millimeters. Your handle length, 5.5 inches or slightly less than 14 centimeters. Handle thickness, 0.6 of an inch or 15.2 millimeters. The handle width at the widest point, which is up here at the forward part of the choil, 1.56 inches or 39.66 millimeters. The closed width on this knife is absolutely the same as the handle width. As you can see, the blade pretty much fully nests within that handle width. So you've got a repeat at 1.56 inches or 39.66 millimeters. Overall length, about 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters. Stop pin diameter, 174 thousandths of an inch or 4.4 millimeters. Behind the edge thickness, yes, it is fairly thick behind the edge. I got about 35 to 37 thousandths of an inch or 0.9 millimeters. Your handle to blade ratio, respectable 0.72, and your weight, pretty hefty, 7.16 ounces or 203 grams. Okay, so just like I say, what you've got here is a big, chunky, heavy-duty knife. No apologies for that. For you guys that are, your cutoff is 4 ounces for an EDC knife, you might as well just turn this video off right now. Before you do, hit the like button, okay? But this is an unapologetic, and I feel like I'm saying that a lot lately because I have reviewed a few cold steel knives lately, but it's an unapologetic, large, heavy-duty folder. So let's take a look at our materials. Up here in the blade, for the blade steel on this, you have 4.8 millimeters of Crucibles CPM S35VN. S35VN, as most of you know, is basically an upgraded, updated version of S30V, and there is added niobium in it, which along with the vanadium is a carbide adder. And this steel tends to be a fairly aggressive and toothy cutter. You'll see at Rockwell, I think the factory rating is 59 to 62, and you'll typically see it around 60. Your carbon content is 1.34. Your chromium content, 14. You've got 3% vanadium and 0.5% niobium. The results on this is a very good edge retention, very good toughness, and very good corrosion resistance. S35VN is not the be-all, end-all of the super high-end steels, but it is, in my opinion, one of the most balanced of the high-end steels without getting into the extreme high-end where you see steels like S110V or M390. But S35VN is a very good high-performing, high-end stainless steel. Now, into the handle, G10. This is a coarse brick pattern G10, and it is the exact same G10 that is on the Recon 1. So if you've got one of those, you know what this G10 feels like. Now, there is a slight difference in this build between the more heavy-duty G10 knives from Cold Steel. Whereas in the Recon 1, again, there are no liners, and then in the 4 Max, there are full titanium liners under the G10. This knife has partial liners, partial steel liners. And when I say partial, they're partial, guys. They are not half of the handle or 2/3 of the handle. The partial liner encompasses just the top section of the locking mechanism. You can see the liners right here, the length that they run. Now, if you look down in this knife, those liners are not any wider then is just as what is necessary to support that triad lock-in system. So they're not here. Let's see if we can see here. You can see there are no liners that you can see visible on the inside of the G10, but you can see just barely up there on the back side of the, I don't even know what this is, the plunger portion of the lock. You can see those liners there. So that's how the partial liners are done on this, and they are stainless steel. They are polished. Okay, they do, integrate into this jimping, which is not on the plunger bar of the lock, but just on the scales and liner. Your small parts, as with most cold steel knives, are in stainless steel, and you have a G10 backspacer. Now that is a change over, again, the Recon 1, which has an anodized aluminum backspacer. Now, I actually like the G10, and I wish that Cold Steel would go to a G10 backspacer in all of these heavy-duty G10 builds. And the reason is mostly aesthetics, because what happens, and we're going to pull a different Cold Steel out here, you can see right here where the anodization gets worn off of the aluminum. Now, this G10 and the SR1 will get wear on it also. But G10 is black all the way through, so it's never going to show anything but black. G10 is structurally rigid. It's very, very sound foundational material. Basically in this size, clamped between these other G10 plates here for the handle scales, it's going to be solid as a rock, and this knife does feel very solid. But just to do away with the wear that you would see on the hard coat anodized aluminum backspacers, I very much like this G10. So as far as materials, very simple, high-end stainless steel for the blade steel, G10 build for the handle with very partial stainless liners, and then stainless lock-in components here for the triad lock, and your stainless pocket clip we pointed out earlier. All right. Fit and finish wise, well, let's go back up here to the blade. You can see we've got a sort of a more industrial grind look on this blade, with our primary grind that is a flat grind in a sort of an as ground satin finish. That is a little coarser than what you see on cold steel knives that are coated, because they're pretty much, they're not mirror, but they're a much finer grind underneath that coating. You can see that does give it a little more heavy duty industrial type of look. And then your flats here are perpendicular or horizontal ground satin in a much finer grind. Your marking for SR1, again, Cold Steel does their markings, model markings, fairly large. They're very proud of their product, and it's attractive. I don't have any issue there. And then on the back of the blade, you can see here you've got Cold Steel, your steel designator, and your made in Taiwan. This knife does feature some sort of beehive stepped large thumb studs that are ambidextrous, and same size. They are symmetrical side to side, rather than, again, on the Recon 1, where you see that your primary side is full sized, and then your off side is smaller and can be changed out. What you've got here on the SR1, they are symmetrical. I don't see any issues, guys. You've got a working sharpening choil here, very well done as far as the edge goes. I don't see any issues here as far as fit and finish on the blade. Everything is even. It's well ground, guys. No issues there. As far as the handle goes, it feels like all the other heavy-duty Cold Steel G10 models. The machining on the G10 is very well done. Of course, you've got that coarse texture that I personally love. I love G10 with a coarse texture on it on these cold steel knives. Absolutely love it. As far as the hardware, it's all in a stainless, except it's all in stainless and just in a as machined finish. And then you've got sort of a dressier pivot here that reflects the styling in the thumb studs. So in this look right here where you catch both of them, you can see the uniformity, how it ties that look together. That's pretty subtle. You don't see that a lot in cold steel knives, which are typically just more business. And that's actually dressy without being dressy. I sort of like that. And then you know your polished pocket clip here, which is fine. It's stamped steel pocket clip. Everything, guys, is fit together well. You can see the fit between the scales and the back spacer here, and then the locking components, including these partial liners. You know, there's just no issues there. Cold steel has really, and this is coming from somebody that was never. I was never a cold steel fan, and now I'm a huge cold steel fan of certain of their models. But their fit and finish is, I've got 3 cold steels sitting here on the table right now. The fit and finish on every one of them is perfect. I've got 2 more in my collection. The fit and finish is perfect on them. For the money, it's pretty much a given. When I open a cold steel box, I expect the fit and finish to be perfect, and I expect the edge on the blade to be as sharp or sharper than any other production knife. So absolutely no issues in the fit and finish. All right, now we'll go on to action. This is a triad lock knife with thumb studs. You can open and close it one-handed. The centering is perfect. The lockup is extremely solid, guys. There's absolutely no play in any direction. And yeah, it's triad lock, guys. And the feel, opening and closing, is typical of triad locks. They tend to be very smooth on phosphor bronze washers with some very cold steel does a hybrid design. There is a phosphor bronze washer on each side, and then there is a paper thin Teflon washer in there. And I don't know if that is a way that it helps them tune that pivot, or if it's just something, I don't know if it's there for the feel or not, but I find these heavier G10 knives to be very smooth with zero play and very easy to set up the pivots. In fact, most of the time when I get a cold steel built like this, I don't really have to adjust it at all. I just carry it a few days. If it feels like it has some manufacturing grit in it, I'll just take it apart. They're easy knives to take apart. Wipe those components off, a couple of drops of oil, and then it's, you know, smooth as butter, phosphor bronze feel. So no issues there. But there is a major issue with using this knife as a one-handed knife. Now, there is a myth that I hear all the time, and it pretty much goes like this: I can't stand backlock knives. I don't care who makes them. What's the use of having a knife you can't open and close with one hand? Well, that's absolutely insane, because all of the cold steel triad knives that I have ever used are super easy to open and close one-handed. You push that plunger down and this blade is just going to drop, guys, just like any good folding knife. The types of knives that we've become used to recently, the new bearing pivot knives and the newer phosphor bronze bushing knives that we've all come to love in the last decade. It's very smooth, and if I push this plunger, this blade is just going to drop, and that's with no play at all. The problem is unlike this Recon 1 or this Talwar, if I do that on this knife, this is what's going to happen. This blade is going to come out, it's going to come down, going to come down, going to come down, blam! Look at that. Look at that, guys. You see that the corner on that edge grind, the termination on the edge grind, it hits my finger. And in fact, look at that. That's a Band-Aid, guys. I hardly ever cut myself on a knife, and I cut myself with this knife setting up for this review. Now, we'll set that down here. We'll pull this Recon 1 real quick. Now, this Recon 1, when I drop it, this is what I get right here. I've got this flat section in the ricasso area that hits my finger. The edge of the blade does not. Now I pull this Talwar here, my favorite cold steel design, and let it drop down. The same thing, guys, the same thing. I've got an area in the ricasso of the blade that impacts my finger, and it stops the blade there. The edge is not on my finger, but in this SR1, that is going to come down and it's going to impact your finger. And you might say, well, Bazon blades just choke up in that choil. But the thing is, it's steel. There's nothing really there, really, that stops that from hitting. And this is a very long, a 5.5 inch handle. To get to that plunger, you've got to come way back on that handle, guys. And I've got medium-sized hands. You know, to get back across 5.5 inches of real estate here to get to that plunger, it puts your finger further back in that choil. So, is that a deal breaker? Well, no. It's just something you've got to keep in mind on this knife. And keep it in mind because you can obviously see it did cut me. And I'm not a noob with knives. I've handled plenty of knives for no other reason than just doing these reviews. So, let's go on up here. We'll look at the ergos on this blade. It's a Tanto blade, guys, with a moderately thick edge at 35 thousandths of an inch. It is not going to be a slicer dicer. What it is going to be is 4.8 millimeters with a heavy tip. Pokey, piercy, strength-wise, you could pry with this knife, even though I still would not pry with it because it's a folder. And it, you know, it's a Tanto, guys. I'm not a huge Tanto fan, especially a lot of Cold Steel's Tanto designs that are more abrupt angled, geometric type Tantos. I am more of a traditional swept, radiused edge type of Tanto liker. I won't say lover because I'm still not a huge Tanto fan, but I would prefer that. I find these blades to be not the most utilitarian, but it is still a blade. It still has an edge, and even though you're not going to be slicing see-through slices on your favorite tomato with it, you still can cut with it, and it's gonna be extremely strong, guys. No doubts about that. And for what this design is going for, that's what they're looking for. That is what you're looking for in this knife, and it's sort of a I'm going to substitute this for a small fixed blade type of toughness. And even though I don't believe in that mindset myself, there are still plenty of people out there that will heavy duty use this knife just like a fixed blade, and I believe that it will hold up to that. So take what you get in this blade style. As far as, you know, using it, cutting with it, you do have a lot of strength at the tip for piercing. I have no doubt you couldn't take this and literally stab it through your car door, just like in the Cold Steel videos. You could stick it into wood and pry. You could dig with the tip easily, no problem there. And this is just a hunk of steel, guys, and it feels thick behind the edge, and it is. but it does have a very sharp factory edge on it, so no issues there. And your thumb studs are back and out of the way of your cutting edge. You should not have any issue with thumb studs being in the way of cutting or in the way of a sharpening system, and you do have plenty of flat here for the blade to clamp into your sharpening system. As like most of these cold steel knives, they do not have jimping on the blades. You do have this sort of jimping here that is just liner and handle specific back here that I find less than useful on most of these knives, even my favorites. But you do typically get a very ergonomic handle design that you can lock into your grip, and this design is no different. Now, I'm going to say this does have sort of a forward choil here. And the choil does not really extend too much to the blade, but you do have this large choil area here. Very easy to use in a choked up position. So you know what? I like that in this knife. This sort of square cut primary choil here for the handle is not super deep and restrictive. The center of the handle, you do have the palm swell across the width, and even it is flat and neutral. You've got a secondary rounded choil at the butt end, and a nice bird's beak at the butt end here for retention back, as well as your retention forward here at the forward choil. It's a very neutral handle design overall, guys, and it does work for forward grip. It does work for a reverse grip, although in my medium-sized hands, to get back and cap the butt here with my thumb, I've got to come back in that forward choil, because you are looking at a 5.5-inch length handle. That's a little long for my hands, and while it does give me plenty of room to move around for multiple grips, it feels long in my hands. This is not a knife that I would use for any martial type use, because my technique involves a lot of rotation from forward to reverse grip, and when a handle gets that long, it's hard to rotate in my grip without it actually impacting parts of my hand. It's just a little too long for that. But again, this is not a fighting knife, guys. It's a heavy utility type of knife, that you're going to use in a pinch of the moment, spur of the moment, in place of a fixed blade. So ergonomically on the handle, it is very neutral, guys. It's not too thick. Just 0.6 of an inch. It's more hand feeling than anything. I am not a personal fan of this more squared cut forward choil. I would have liked to have seen that a full radius cut, just like the rear choil. But other than that, I can't really argue with this. The pocket clip is totally a non-issue in the grip. I can feel that it's there, but I can also tell you there is absolutely nothing about it that is going to hot spot in my grip under use. So as far as ergos and utility, it is what it is, guys. It's a heavy duty, thick bladed hammer of a knife. That's what it is. It's never going to be the slicer dicer. So let's go and do the overall on this and get this already long video closed out. And I'm just going to sort of repeat what I've already said. This is a heavy duty, no apologies, blunt force trauma. It's a heavy knife, guys, with almost 5 millimeters of blade stock thickness and a fairly thick edge. While it is a good cutter, it is not what you would consider a slicer. It is going to be extremely strong. It's going to be extremely strong, guys. Stronger than you will ever need in a folder. It is large and it is heavy. So it's not going to be, even for me, somebody that likes to EDC a larger knife, it's not going to be the large knife that I go for an EDC. So it is more of a dedicated use type of knife for me, at least. The one downfall is it's not the best design from Cold Steel as far as one hand opening and closing, and my finger will attest to that because it got me instantly, guys. And 4.8 millimeters of blade stock thickness on a 4-inch blade, it closes with enough force where the first time you accidentally let it drop on your finger, well, it's going to cut you. And that it did. So you have to keep that in mind. And I honestly, that was the disappointing thing in this design for me, because Cold Steel typically does a great job assuring that these knives can be opened and closed one-handed. And this one, it just falls short of that. But if you do want something that's heavy duty to the point of basically it's going to be saying, hey, I'm heavy duty, that's what I am, this is a good choice in either the Tanto or the clip point design. No issues with the quality here. No issues at all with the quality, the heavy dutiness, the fit and finish, anything on it, guys. It's all good. So I can recommend it for what it is. Am I going to add it to my collection? No, I'm not. Not after it cut me, I'm not. But if it is what you are looking for, it is a good choice for that. All right, guys. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to watch one of my videos. I apologize for this one running long. That's just the way it turned out. God bless all of you, and we will talk to you again.